And welcome back to Reflect Forward. I'm your host, Carrie Siggins. I'm so happy you're here today. Oh, I have a fun conversation for you today. I am interviewing Julie Broad. She is the founder of a self publishing book services company called Book Launchers. And she is Amazon's overall number one best selling author. Like, that is amazing, right? And so she knows what it takes to be a best selling author. And she does it all through self publishing. Book Launchers has a really great process that helps people who know that they have a book in them, particularly people who want to write a nonfiction book, particularly leaders who have a story that they want to share with the world to make an impact, to help them bring more awareness to their business and advance them as being a thought leader. You can do this on your own without having to get a traditional book publishing deal or go to a hybrid publisher, which is what I've done and we've talked about on this show before. So, anyway, she's really, really cool. She's a fun leader. She's so self aware and really leans into the challenges of building a team and growing a company. She's been a ridiculously successful real estate investor, built a real estate training company. She's done all kinds of things that have accumulated to where she is now, and that is helping people to produce the book that's inside them. She's a renowned speaker. She does all kinds of speaking events, talking about strategies on how to write a book that helps you build your business and create yourself as a thought leader and have more impact and influence in the world, which is something that we all want, even if we're scared to write a book or even if we never think we're going to. So, this is a super fun interview. I hope that you enjoy it. I'm sure that you will. And so, hang tight and I'll be right back with Julie. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. I have Julie Broad on the show with me today. Julie, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Oh, this is going to be fun. I love what you do. I'm in the midst of, I'm through writing my book. I'm in the editing stages. So we're going to have all kinds of fun conversations about books and leadership and all of that. So I just can't wait to pick your brain.
All right, let's do it.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about you first. So you have been an entrepreneur. You've started different businesses across real estate, now in the book business. So can you give us a little bit about your entrepreneurial and leadership journey?
Yeah, for sure. It's kind of one of those things that I got into real estate initially just to create options for myself. And then when I was tired in the job I was in, I dove into real estate because it was there. I was already investing. So I kind of went in there. And it was through real estate that I got into book writing. It's a long story, but the very short version is I created a platform. I was teaching people how to invest in real estate. And I got approached by a couple of publishers. And suddenly I was like, woohoo, book deal, and I was so excited. And I told them my book idea because, everybody seems to have one and I had one. And they were like, no, like that's been done. It was they thought it was a generic real estate book. And then they said, but we have an idea for you. And so this was Wiley, and they gave me a book idea. And we went back and forth for 3 months building the proposal, which is also very unusual. So I just assumed there was a book deal at the end of this path. But what it was a rejection letter at the end saying that I didn't have a strong enough platform to sell books. So they dangled me along for all this time and then rejected me. But it was, as I think a lot of us see over time, it was a really, really great gift because I ended up writing the book I originally wanted to write, and I self-published it. And I also did it with determination to do it better than if Wiley had given me the book deal. And so I ended up taking it to number 1 on Amazon, in print books, ahead of Dan Brown, ahead of Game of Thrones. And it just opened up this world of publishing to me and the possibilities and the fact that you can have full control and you can have all the rights and you don't need this gatekeeper. And so over time, I kind of dreamed up Book Launchers, which is where I am today. And I'm helping other people, create these fantastic, traditionally published quality book, and they keep all the rights and royalties and control.
Yeah, that's great. We'll dive into that a little bit, but let's talk about how you bounced back, right? I'm sure that was really hard feeling like, oh, there's going to be this book deal. And then you get the rejection letter. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was also extra hard because I had friends who got book deals with Wiley. In fact, like the very thing that I had just gone through, they went through and they came out of the other side with a book deal. And I remember seeing this one picture of three of my friends at a dinner with Wiley authors. There was a couple authors I didn't know, but three of them were my friends. And it was like the Wiley dinner, the Wiley author dinner. And I was like, I should be there. And so I had a lot of like, I'm not good enough. Like, why am I not good enough kind of feelings? And that was the hardest part, I think, to kind of overcome was like that feeling of, well, I didn't get chosen. Somebody else hasn't told me it's okay. And they all were chosen and they're good enough. And so it was like that, honestly, was the hardest thing. And to get over it, I mean, I don't think I ever get over those feelings. I've just kind of learned to put them in the back seat and give them a sandwich and be like, we're doing this. Like you can chap at me all you want, but we're doing it. But I focused on the reader and I really thought about the book I wanted to write and why I wanted to write it. It had nothing to do with me. It was really about the other investors who were starting out that were about to make the same mistakes I'd made. And I felt that I had to write the book, even if I could help one of them avoid some of the things that I'd gone through. And that's what got me through it.
And so was it liberating, right? To be, okay, I'm going to write this, I'm going to, write this book, do this other project that wasn't really what I originally had set out to do. And then you recover from the rejection and then go write your own book. So what was that like, right? Of being able to move in the creative direction that you wanted to after that process?
Yeah, it was a much easier book to write. I think it was still hard. Like that's not to make it sound like, oh, the book like just magically flowed out of me. But the book they wanted me to write, I look back and I am so grateful I didn't write that book. I had zero interest in it, so I think it would have been a really, really tough slog to get through it. Whereas this book, I was excited to write it. I was a little scared because I was sharing things that I hadn't made public at the time. But yeah, it was much easier to write the book that I felt I was meant to write or should write.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So how then did that lead to book launchers?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't overnight as nothing is. It actually kind of really catapulted my business at the time. I had a real estate training and education company and we invested in real estate. And so we had people calling us saying, hey, we've got $250,000. Can you invest it? So it grew the real estate side pretty quickly. And then it also grew our training and education company quite quickly. So I was really busy for a while with all of that. But bit by bit, I was getting bored. And my husband in particular, who we did all the real estate investing stuff together. He was getting bored and getting into acting and like doing other things. And so it just kind of long story came to be like, I want to do something else. We wanted to move to the States. And so I dreamed up a business that was in Canada before, by the way. And I just dreamed up a business that we could use to apply for a visa to move to the States. And that was book launchers.
That's amazing. And so, has what is the premise behind book launchers, and has it changed since you dreamed up your idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's 5 years now that we've been doing book launchers, and it's all about writing, publishing, and promoting a book, a nonfiction book for growing your business, growing your brand, establishing yourself as a thought leader. And the premise has not changed because I started it to create books that were traditionally published quality and to do it with marketing from the beginning. Because the thing I saw with people who did self-publish was they would write the book and then they would figure out how to market it. And it would either end up with the wrong book for their goals or the book wouldn't sell because they hadn't aligned it to the reader that needed to read it. And so everything we do at book launchers is the top quality. Like this is not a service for people who are going, I'm going to like cheaply make a book because this is the absolute best quality of a book you can produce. And it's oriented right from the beginning to be set up to sell and achieve your goals.
Yeah, that's great. So, why do you think leaders should write a book? Like, what is your pitch around, getting people to do the hard work of writing a book?
Yeah, I mean, I never try to convince somebody that they have to write a book.
Yeah,
It's not easy.
yes,
It
it's
it
hard.
has to come from within. And so I think somebody has to be because there's a lot of people who are like, I know a book would help my business. And I'm like, yeah, you're not ready.
Mhm.
Like you really do have to have some sort of an internal drive, usually for impact, right? Like, because I think the desire to make money from it wanes when you're working on it. But if you desire to have that impact, so the conversations we usually have revolve around like, what does success with a book look like for you? And who is like, at the end of the day, who do you picture reading your book and how is their life changing or improving or what's different after they're done reading your book? And if somebody is connected to those two answers, then we're probably going to be able to help them create a really great book. The person who comes in and just says, "I just need to be a bestseller." Okay, that's it's a very tough journey, and setting yourself up to be a bestseller with none of the other pieces in place, it's tough. So yeah, I never try to convince anybody, but if you feel compelled to have an impact on a certain person's life with a message, then yeah, you've probably got potential for a book.
Yeah, I love that. That's totally the reason why I wrote mine. And mine is, shares my leadership journey and then all around this idea of ownership thinking. I run an employee-owned company. And one of the really powerful things that I learned through writing and just in general, and I've always been a writer, so it comes naturally for me, but I always encourage people to write because writing articles, writing blogs, and then writing this book has helped me get so clear on my message, on my purpose, on my why, on that impact, and being able to like truly articulate exactly my belief system and how that can translate into growing a company and building this amazing culture. And I love it. Adam Grant talks about this a lot. I just saw a post on Instagram the other day about the power of writing. It isn't to like get your thoughts out, right? It's to actually really refine and clarify your thinking so that you can make a bigger impact. And that's definitely been my experience
Yeah.
with this. I know not everybody wants to write a book. I know not everybody, even fewer are going to actually do it. But I think that's the most surprising thing I found through this process is just how much clarity it has given me through that whole process.
Yeah, I love that you experienced that. We've had clients whose business has actually grown while they're
Yeah.
writing the book because they've clarified their audience. Like they're like, "Oh my goodness, like this is the person I'm serving and why." And then that feeds into their marketing messaging. And then some of them have also found like really cool acronyms because they're like, "I really need a way to explain like this process that I have." And then through writing the book, they kind of force themselves to create that thing, and now they've got this thing that's like taking on a life of its own, and people are posting and sharing, and it causes that growth. So it gives you that space and time and forces you to think through things that you probably in your day to day aren't thinking through. So that's awesome.
Yeah, I love it. So I think a lot of people can understand the concept of writing a book to drive business, right? To establish yourself as that thought leader, really from an external viewpoint, right? But what about from like inside your company? Like that's one of the interesting things that we'll see that happens once I publish my book. My book, of course, shares a lot of stories about my company. Like, how do you think leaders can use books to, I don't know, like motivate their employees or help their employees feel like they're part of, something that's bigger?
Yeah, that's been a fun one because I put out a book last year called Self Publish and Succeed, which was our 3.5 years at that point of learning on what processes work and what processes don't work, and I put it all in a book. And it's not my books. My name's on the title, but everybody calls it the Book Launcher's Book, which is really cool. Like it is a company book. We use it for hiring too. Onboarding, people have to read it as part of their onboarding process. We work with a lot of contractors. The contractors get a copy of the book too. So now they're more integrated with our culture and they know like our no boring books philosophy and they know what we mean when we're saying marketing focused and marketing is layered. And so it's a powerful training tool and culture tool. And I think done well, I think you're right. Like it unifies the team and also clarifies some of the things that, we as leaders can just kind of assume that we've communicated, but we actually haven't, or it's been misunderstood. And the book actually is like a reference guide.
Exactly. That's exactly how I see mine playing out too, because of the specificity. Mine, ownership mindset. It's all around this idea of self leadership, right, and
Mhm.
how you lead yourself, and then how you lead others. And it is very much based on my company and being employee owned, and how I learned. Starting at 20, I was 28 when I joined this company to start running it, and I had no idea what I was doing. And so that's what I'm really excited about, and that was not why I set out to write it, right? It was like
Mhm.
I just felt like I had this book in me, and it wasn't to even try to drive more business to our company because it's not about what we do, right? We
Yeah.
we make high pressure water blasting tools, but like I just wanted to get this whole thing out. And now I'm beginning to see how it's going to be this really interesting tool to for recruitment and for helping our employees understand who we are,
Mhm.
the company really takes on the personality of their leaders. And so what a great, like, tool to be able to give employees to be like, "Oh, okay, now I understand why all of this is happening or why we think this way, why we show up this way." But I didn't have that in my mind at all when I was writing this book. So it's been a really fun discovery. I'm sure it was for you too.
Yeah, and I mean, we're working on a new one, and I say we very very enthusiastically because while I've kind of driven the content, the team is contributing. The team's as excited for it to come out as I am, maybe even more, because I have to do a lot of the marketing work. So I might be less excited for that than they are, but yeah, it is the fact that it's a tool that we can even give our clients to. I mean, in our case, it's a little different than your book because ours is our process. And so a lot of our clients will reference it and it makes that job easier for the team too, because they're like, oh, it's in chapter 6. And they're like, oh yeah, I read that. Everybody's on the same page with it, which is really, really, really cool.
I love it. I love it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your team and your leadership style. I know that you say that really look to build leaders within your organization, right? So can you talk about, what your company is like, what your culture is like and what you do to really refine and cultivate it?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually interesting because I set the direction, but the team really is the ones that figure out how they're going to execute and get where they want to go. And so we just did our annual planning because our year starts in July 1st, and it was fun because even though everybody kind of plans their own departments separate, we came together with like this one, okay, this year is the year of simplification. In previous years, it was like, this is the year of process, this is the year of team. And it's funny because before the meeting, I didn't say like, this is the theme for the year, but everybody comes together and kind of creates. And because we're also, I'm not a micromanager. I can't be. It's just not my personality. I'm not able. Like if you're somebody who needs step-by-step clear instructions, I am not your person. Which has drawbacks and benefits. But as a company, it's been great because I have some people who are really great at figuring out, okay, that's where she wants to go. So here's my options, and I'm going to do it this way. And we learn and we grow together. But it's really fun to see everybody kind of come together with plans that are all going to take us in the same direction. So that's been really cool.
That's awesome. So what's been the biggest mistake that you've made, whether it's with book launchers or some of your previous companies on this leadership journey?
Just one.
Yeah.
I mean,
However vulnerable you want to get with us, you just do that.
yeah, I mean, it's honestly hard to pick one. I'm trying to find one that kind of stands out. I mean, at times I think I give people too much room, and so they can feel overwhelmed. Like I will set the direction and let them do their thing, and I check in. We have regular meetings, but I kind of rely on people to say, "Hey, like you need to help me with this." And sometimes I can not realize that I haven't given people enough. And so that is one mistake that I still make sometimes is I'm like, okay, well, we said we were doing this. So why are you doing this? And they're like, well, and I've just left them I've given them too much space. And so there's a fine line that I don't always get right about giving people direction and giving them support, but also giving them space to make their mistakes and grow and learn and figure things out.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely done that before too. I mean, I think that's the toughest part about about delegation, right? Is that am I giving this person enough space versus not checking in enough and I'm definitely the kind of person like I'm want to work on the vision, right? I want to work on the big picture stuff, but the devil is in the details. And so like really good leaders have to find that balance
Yeah.
of how much autonomy to give after you set the vision and help set the direction versus paying attention to the details and making sure that people are staying on track and every person is different. It requires some different level of autonomy versus follow up.
Yeah.
So I totally relate to that too, but I always tell leaders who I'm mentoring or coaching within my company, like you need to give autonomy, but you've got to care about the details.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's what execution is the details. It doesn't mean that you have to be in them, you have to be making decisions. It doesn't mean any of that, but you've got to be aware of what's going on in your company.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's a tricky balance sometimes for sure.
Yeah, we've kind of solved a lot of it by creating metrics boards and having processes. So you get a lot more what do you call it, lateral pressure and lateral checks, so that it's not that it doesn't have to be a check that comes from top down. But it is when something goes wrong too. There's also you got to take a deep breath and not like charge in and be like, okay, I'm fixing this, right? So there's a
Exactly.
lot of that, but I enjoy it for the most part. So that's been good. But it's definitely a mistake. I've definitely seen things go sideways, and I haven't stepped in fast enough, and sometimes I've stepped
Yep.
in too fast. So
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that. So you've said that you love to try new things, which completely resonates with me. I'm that kind of person too, and like really lean into things that make you uncomfortable.
yeah.
So can you tell us a little bit about that and how leaning into that discomfort has brought you greater success as a leader?
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced a ton because of that. And that I think when you experience things, you learn lessons, and lessons are the greatest teacher. Because when things go right, it's great, but it's hard to actually extract lessons. So, I mean, a perfect example is us getting really comfortable in real estate. We could have just kicked back and lived like an easy life, but it was like, man, we're getting comfortable. Like, okay, let's shake it up. Like, okay, we'll move to the States. We'll start a brand new business. And, at the time, I ended up actually getting pregnant partway through our moving process. So then we threw a baby into the mix. But all of that, it creates these really rich experiences. And it's not, I wouldn't recommend it for every personality type because it is challenging and there's moments that are really high stress. But those things create the greatest moments and the greatest memories. And I wouldn't trade any of those experiences for anything else. And as a leader, it gives me the ability to kind of feel compassion to people, understand people that are going through all kinds of things that I haven't experienced, but I've experienced something that allows me to see the emotion and kind of reflect on the emotion they're feeling and how it would be to be in their shoes, which is powerful.
Yeah, I agree. There is so much There's just so much goodness in getting through hard things. And, certainly it builds upon our capabilities and our competencies, right? The more that we lean into those difficult things, we learn, right? No one ever says, oh, that was so easy. I learned so much. It was like, oh, God, I really screwed that up. Or that was very stressful. I had to have hard conversations. I had to make decisions when I wasn't sure what the outcome was going to be.
Yeah.
And that's really where we stretch ourselves. And I mean, I personally believe like that's the essence of being human. I always tell people like, don't, why are you upset when you have a problem to solve? Like, that is literally what we are put on this planet to do. We either have problems that are given to us to solve, or we go create our own that we have to figure out. Like, we're meant to solve problems. And so, figure out how to find pleasure even in that discomfort, pleasure in some of the suffering that comes with it,
Yep.
because that's how we grow as human beings. So, I can really appreciate, that situation you found yourself in of like, oh, we're moving to a new country, starting a new business, have a new baby. Like, how are we going to figure this out? But you come out on the other side, and I'm sure you felt, so much more resilient and stronger as a human being, as a mother.
Yeah. And I think there's a couple things there is like, first of all, like I wouldn't say anything can be thrown at me because I really don't want to invite that. But you get the confidence that you can go through like hard things, so things don't phase you as much. And even with the company, like speaking of company culture, one of the things I'm always telling them is, okay, like it's a new problem, great. Like we want new problems. What we don't want are the same problems coming up over and over again. And
Exactly.
so whenever we have a new problem, we're like, okay, cool. This means we're gonna go to a new level of growth. Like we're about to learn something new. We're gonna, like it's always where the evolution and the growth and the innovation comes from. And so we as a company, I've tried as much as possible to make people excited when it's a new problem. And if it's an old problem coming back, well then like this is not a good thing. So let's fix that.
Yep. Yep. I agree. And you're right. I think that the more you deal with as a leader, the easier it is to handle that next problem that's thrown at you. Not
Mhm.
to agree that you want to manifest that into your life, but I was just talking to my husband about a conversation. My husband does not handle stress like I do. Like, almost nothing phases me at this point. It's just like, okay, well, we'll figure out how to deal with it.
Mhm.
But he said that he was like, "How does this not stress you out?" And I was like, "Well, because it is what it is, and what is stressing about it? That's not going to change anything right now. So, I'm going to have a phone call tomorrow, and I'll have more information about what the next step is going to be. But I can't do that until tomorrow." And he's like, "God, I cannot wait until I'm at that point." But what he doesn't see is that he's actually gotten a lot better at handling really stressful situations within his
Yeah.
business than what he did 5 years ago. Yes, he may not be as far along on that journey, but you do like stuff just doesn't phase you as much when you're like, okay, I've been there, I've done that, and I'm not going to sit there and, lose sleep over it tonight because I'll figure it out tomorrow. And I've gone through this before.
Yeah. A friend actually kind of explained it to me in a really great way. And he's like, every time you experience something, all you do is you grow your capacity, and you're growing your
Yeah.
capacity to hold the stress and the joy at the same time. And the
Yeah.
more you become a bigger, I don't know, bigger, greater leader, whatever you want to call, like the more you handle and the more you can have
Uh-huh.
thrown at you. And it's a really cool way to kind of look at it as,
Yeah.
oh, this is another problem. Great. I'm expanding.
I totally agree, totally agree. I love that, right? The joy and the stress, right? I love Viktor, and I don't know if you can say I love Viktor Frankl's Man's Search of Meaning. Like, there's not a lot to love about that book, but because it's so
Yeah.
heartbreaking and sad. But it resonated with me because I do think that there is so much meaning in suffering, and that there even can be joy in suffering if we're not afraid of it.
Mhm.
And that's such a good mindset to be able to have of like, hey, through this, that growth is going to happen. So let's find the way to be able to grow in it, to look at it in a positive way, to appreciate and be grateful for the lessons that you're going to learn from it. So I really like that way that he worded that for you. I think that's spot on for sure. Not that you want to do that all the time, but
But it's a way to like when the problem hits, it's a great way to be like, okay, great. Now I'm just expanding. Like there's more room, and I love that because the bigger your company gets, the more room you have to have in order to, still enjoy life and handle the issues that come up. Kind of like you said, like, oh yeah, well, I can't do anything about it right now. So let's carry on. And it's like Richard Branson, I always think of him like he's such a calm person who's able to find joy in life. And yet there has to be, like with all the companies and all the things, like there has to be pure chaos swirling around all of that. But, he can find that calm, like joy in life and have space for both.
yep, absolutely. I love it. I love it. All right, let's circle back to the business and get a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of how you work with your clients. So, let's say a listener of mine wants to come in and write a book, self-publish. What kind of process do you walk them through?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very elaborate process. So when you come in, usually we're having an author branding conversation with you, actually. So we're figuring out, who are you? How does the book fit? Because the book is usually an extension of your personal brand, and what makes you unique and cool as a person is what we'll use to market the book. And then how does that fit with the person you want to connect with? How does it fit with that audience? So it's actually an author branding marketing call that kicks it off. And then some of our clients write their own books. So we pair them with a writing coach who develops the hook of the book and works with you on audience and outline and chapter structure and all of that. Or if you're going to a writer, it's the same thing. They're still creating all the same parts, but the writer is either taking your content. So if you have podcast episodes or if you're a speaker, we work with a lot of speakers whose keynote talk is kind of the backbone of their book. And so they'll take all the materials they have and then they'll interview you to fill in the gaps or interview you to fill in the whole book if you don't have any content to begin with. But as you know, and as you're starting to find out, that's only the first hard part.
Right.
You get the draft done, and even if you work with a writer, there's still challenge because it's that the thinking through of the material that requires you to work. And so in both cases, you have to get clarity and get ways to explain your story and find out those pieces. But once that's done, you're going through a content edit, 2 rounds of a copy edit, and a proofread. And while we're doing that, we're doing a whole bunch of marketing things. We are researching your pricing, your categories, your keywords for Google as well as for Amazon. We're looking at, okay, what's your roadmap for launch going to be? What's your launch strategy? Where are your audience hanging out? Where are we going to be pitching you? Because at the end of all this, my team works alongside with the authors to pitch them to podcasts and speaking appearances and library events and bookstore events and basically all the kind of things that book marketing needs to have. Amazon ads, book awards, all those things. We're going to be doing that with you. So we need to do the research to be ready when the book is coming out. So we've got all of that for the team to go and pitch. So yeah, in 3 minutes, I explained what takes most people, 12 months to 15 months.
Good time. Yeah. And are most of the people who you work with, do they have you, do the writing, whether it's ghost writing or the interview, what does that look like for within book launchers?
It's a real mix. And some people start
Yeah.
writing the book themselves and then switch to a writer, which truthfully, my most recent book that is going to come out next year, I did that. I wrote the
Uh-huh.
first 3 quarters and then was just struggling to get the last quarter done. And then I kind of laughed at myself. I'm like, I have 7 writers. Like, why don't I give my book to one of them and let them finish it. So yeah, so some people will start writing the book themselves and then switch to a writer. Others come in. It's not even a 50-50 split though. I would say we veer a little bit more heavily to people writing their own book.
Yep. Okay. And what are the pros and cons of self-publishing versus hybrid, going to, a hybrid publisher and then a traditional publisher?
Yeah, I mean, for traditional, I think a lot of people have to really look at the book deal and make sure it's something worth signing.
Yeah.
Because I just using my own story, is I would have wrote a book I didn't care about and been expected to promote it. And I would have made about 80 cents, maybe 88 cents per book sold. And I wouldn't have been able to sell bulk books, at least not and make the kind of money I did on it. And I sold a lot in the back of rooms and for speaking engagements and things like that, where it cost me $4 per copy and I was selling it for 20. So
Mhm.
it's limiting, but if you get a great book deal, like if you get a 6-figure advance or a high 5-figure advance, and that tells you they're going to put a lot of weight behind your book, then that might be a good deal. Anything less than that, you got to remember you're giving up your story, you're giving up your rights to this material, and they may not do an audiobook, but you won't have the right to do it. If somebody wants to turn your book into a TV series of any kind, which happens a lot more than people realize, you won't have the rights to negotiate that. So there's a lot of pieces that I think people should pay really close attention to and make sure they're getting a lot in exchange for that book deal. Hybrid's a little different. You keep the rights. Depending on the hybrid, they have bookstore distribution, which can be one of the hardest things about self-publishing. It's getting that physical bookstore distribution. So if physical bookstore distribution is important to you, doing your research on a hybrid to make sure you're working with a good one, because there are some, not good ones, very not good ones. But, bookstore distribution can be a great reason to go with a hybrid. Make sure they've got a great editorial and great cover team. But self-publishing to me is kind of the entrepreneurial way because you have all the control, so you don't have to worry about anybody else, and you keep all the rights and you keep all the royalties, but you're also driving the bus. So why a company like Book Launchers can be really useful is we're overseeing everything. You don't have to figure out who to hire at every phase. We're building marketing in and all of those things. Because if you self-publish on your own, you have to figure out, who do I hire? How do I hire them? What makes them good? And are they doing good work? Because that's the other thing. I certainly don't know what is a good layout. I do now, but I didn't before. Like, what are the things I need to look for to see if somebody's actually done a good job or not? So it's a lot, but yeah. So I'm a fan of self-publishing, obviously. Been a great gift, but I think there's good reasons for certain people to go like each for each opportunity.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I went the hybrid publishing route and I interviewed, I guess, probably 10 hybrid publishers. But I did it for that reason of like, look, I run a fairly big company and I don't have the time to be driving the bus, but
Yeah.
I want to own everything because I think that there's lots of different things I'm going to do with this book. And I wanted to own all of the rights to
Yeah.
it. And I also was like, yeah, I'm writing it. I don't really know if I'm going to go shop it and what all of that means. So I was like, it just seems like this makes the best sense for me with being able to, still have complete creative control and ownership, but just not have to worry about all of the rest of the things that I have to do, at least while I do this first one. And
Mhm.
then we'll see what happens. Maybe it's great. Maybe I decide to self-publish next one, or maybe I get a book deal the next one.
Yeah.
All right. So as we wrap things up, I have two questions that I'd like to ask you. So the first one is, the name of this podcast is Reflect Forward. What does Reflect Forward mean to you?
I think it means when you look at any challenge, because we've been talking about challenges and problems and things like that, it's rather than like being in the moment, like, oh my gosh, this is so hard, like reflect forward that this is going to give you a gift that you're going to be really grateful for. It's going to create momentum or innovation or something else great in the future.
Yeah, I love that. That's fantastic. And if you had one piece of advice for leaders looking to be at the very best at what they do, what would it be?
I think connect to your core. Like, who are you at your core, and be as true to that as you possibly can, because that will make you the best leader possible.
Yeah, and you'll be happier,
Right?
right?
More
All
fulfilled.
that imposter syndrome, trying to pretend to be somebody or not, all that does is just cause more problems.
Hmm.
Wonderful. All right, so how can people find you? I wanna help people get to you so that they can get the book that's inside of them out.
Yeah, I mean, the best thing for that is to go to booklaunchers.com/7 steps. It's the number 7 steps. That will give you a download to work through who's my audience, why am I writing this book, like what needs to be in the book. That will help you with that. If you want to just hang out with me, I hang out on YouTube all the time. So booklaunchers.tv. That's the one place that I've kept to myself. My team doesn't oversee the YouTube channel at all. So when somebody's responding to you from Book Launchers, it's me.
I love it, I love it. So tell us about your YouTube channel.
Yeah, every Tuesday and Friday we put out I put out a new video, and it's all tips around writing, publishing, and promoting your book. So I went to the American Library Association, and we were meeting with all the libraries in the U.S. to help get better distribution and better library programming for our authors. And so I've done a big series on getting your book into libraries and how that matters, and so lots of things like that.
Oh my gosh, I cannot wait. I'm gonna go check it out. That's fantastic. And how about if they wanna connect directly with you?
I mean, that's the
Uh,
best thing to do. And then when you
Best way
sign up,
to reach you?
yeah, when you sign up for the 7 steps, you also, I think the first email you get actually comes from my email address. So you can
Got it.
always hit reply and that will go to me.
Perfect. Excellent. Well, I will include all of that in the show notes so that everybody has easy access. Julie, this has been so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom with us. It's so exciting. I wish I would have met you a year ago.
Yeah, I wish we would have too. I would have loved to work with you. Well, I wish you all
Well, you
the
never
success.
know.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, you never know about the second one. So it's in there. It's in there. It's formulating. So, but I really appreciate learning all of this, and I cannot wait to share it with my listeners because I know many of them have told me like I really want to write a book, but I don't know how to get started. And so this will be really helpful for all of them. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, hang tight, everybody. I'll be right back. Okay, everybody, I am back. I hope you enjoyed that interview with Julie and maybe are inspired to write that book. It is such an interesting process to go through to get your story out, to get your message out. And now there's this really easy way to do it through self publishing, but you don't have to do all the work. So I encourage you, if you are thinking about writing one, do it. It is one of the most rewarding, although hard, things that you can ever do. All right. With that, I will leave you until next week. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And if you like this podcast, please write a review, subscribe to it, share it with a friend, talk about it, let people know. It always helps with the algorithms. And I so appreciate it. I am so grateful to all of my listeners. This is really turning into a very special podcast because of all of you. So thank you so much. All right. Take care. Talk to you next week.